Just a young one, not more than 23, and old Tommy met at Memphis 503. He was from the swampland and I was from the hills, and we both found out we liked smoking behind the trailer wheels. Tommy liked me a strong one, Tommy smoked a green one, Tommy roll a timber and send me on my way. Way up north the days are cold and heaters barely heat. Plants don't grow and lizards die and dogs are stuck inside. And if you had a ball that was dry, old Tommy, he didn't mind. He'd just light a swisher sweet and help you on your feet. Tommy light me a strong one, Tommy smoke a green one, Tommy roll a timber and send me on my way. Tommy light me a strong one, Tommy smoke a green one, Tommy roll a timber and send me on my way.
If you want to change the world, start off by making your bed. If you make your bed every morning, you will have accomplished the first task of the day. It will give you a small sense of pride, and it will encourage you to do another task, and another, and another. And by the end of the day, that one task completed will have turned into many tasks completed. Making your bed will also reinforce the fact that the little things in life matter. If you can't do the little things right, you'll never be able to do the big things right. And if by chance you have a miserable day, you will come home to a bed that is made.
West Nile too. There you go.
Someone told me long ago, there's a calm before the storm. I know it's been coming for some time. When it's over, so they say, it'll rain a sunny day. I know, shining down like water. I wanna know, have you ever seen the rain? I wanna know, have you ever seen the rain? Coming down a sunny day. Yesterday, days before, sun is cold, rain is high. I know, been that way for all my time. Till forever on it goes, through the circle, fast and slow. I know, it can't stop, I wonder. I wanna know, have you ever seen the rain? I wanna know, have you ever seen the rain? Coming down on a sunny day. I wanna know, have you ever seen the rain? I wanna know, have you ever seen the rain? Coming down on a sunny day.
If you don't subscribe to Phantom Facts Society, then don't talk to me or my son ever again.
Broadcasting live from the Free Speech Studios. Deep within the city of Fountain, with over 4 years of satisfying the curious mind and looking damn sexy while doing it. Ladies and gentlemen, Phantom Fact Society.
Welcome back, everyone, to Phantom Fact Society. I am your host, the Ginger Stream of Consciousness, the Timu Tim Dillon, Corey Hussing himself, back in the saddle here at the behest of a very special friend of the show, which I'll just a little teaser: 2026 Poet of the Year nominee, people, by Aspiring Authors Magazine. So quite the grab. And excuse the sunglasses. Me and the French president are both having a horrible eye disease, which is not contagious to you, but I am so ashamed. I will have to wear my Hawkeye aviators. I apologize for the cigarette, but when you're talking to the 2026 Poet of the Year nominee for Aspiring Authors Magazine, you gotta get it together. You gotta get it together. So without further ado, let's welcome our guest, C.S. Lark. Welcome to the show. How's it going? Welcome back to the show.
Hi, Corey. How are you?
I'm excellent. I think you're doing better. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're writing books. You're writing poems. You're writing kids' books. Stop. You're making the rest of us look very bad. Tell me, do I call you CS? Can I just call you CS?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Well, tell me, CS, what's from the last time we talked to you, which I think is almost a year ago, maybe not quite a year ago, you had written, I'm going to get this wrong again, Schindler's Goal?
Deller's Goal, yeah.
Yes. And you'd written that. And man, times have changed just in our Western hemisphere since that book came out. And then you switched and you wrote a child's book, which was remind me the title again of that. I'm horrible.
It's called The Ribbon, Tales of Olivia Kitty, because my cat is named Olivia, so I wanted to do it between the dog and my cat.
Is this the cat that we're voting for cutest? Yes. It's a lot of work here. We're voting for Poet of the Year, Cat of the Year, and I'll be honest, I'll vote, but I also think my cat is the cutest. So there's just I got to be on the record for saying that JC has Olivia B. But nonetheless, I hope that goes well for you. Did you also get the dog in there? You got a dog?
I did, yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, I tell you what, I'll draw the line if there's a ferret of the year. I won't do it. Right? No ferrets. So tell me why the transition from Schindler's Goal to the children's book?
Well, first and foremost, I'm going to go back to writing young adult fiction, but part of the reason, or biggest reason, was because I had already contacted my publisher about a year before. I had said, I have this book that's in the works. I want to get it published. And then I was involved in some personal things and totally forgot about it, and was going through my emails, and I was like, oh, I need to get a book into the publisher. So I was like, why don't I just write about my dog and cat? And I had no plans on being a children's author. I didn't want to be a children's author. I wanted to be exclusively a young adult author. But because of that,
why so adamant about? I don't know much about the author world, so you seem very adamant about that. Why? What's the reason?
Well, being a children's author, it's a little different than a young adult author. So, I don't have children. I know my cousins do, but they're all older children, and so I didn't really have any children in my life to write the books for. But also, I'm more of a historical fiction kind of person. So I wanted to be able to, as a young adult, transfer my thoughts and my feelings to other young adults to tell them, hey, this is actually happening or this actually happened. You guys need to be aware of it. And so children's books are kind of a different genre and niche in and of themselves.
You don't want to really cross over too much. You got to sort of stay your
Yeah.
lane type of idea. Okay, that makes sense. No, I was sort of curious as to why. Now, but you did it anyway. So,
Okay.
uh, did you find that you enjoyed doing it a little bit, or you just had?
I enjoyed actually the whole process of it. It was really, I mean, I wrote the book in about 10 minutes. I just went on my phone and just typed in my notepad as to what I wanted, sent it to the publisher. I think what I enjoyed the most was getting to see the illustrations and to see how I sent the pictures to them, and then based on the pictures. That was really neat that they got the illustrations like spot on of the pictures I sent.
I got to bring it to life. Yeah, it's a fascinating process. I'm friends with someone that does illustrations for books from time to time or commissioned art. And the amount of pressure those people are under to get it right the first time, because you're dealing with the corporation. You got to keep it within their realms. And then this is, the author's baby here too. You got to, keep it within the realms of what their mind had envisioned. So, but book came out, great success. You're going to go back now to young adult historical
Yeah,
fiction, you said?
I think I'm gonna bounce between the two of them for a little bit because everybody's asking for a follow-up book to the children's book. So I'm probably I would really like to get my young adult book manuscript done and submitted so I can get that one done. And then I don't know how the order is gonna go. It depends upon um what I which one I get done first and all that stuff.
Do you now, when you're like, anyone in a trade or profession, they look at the competition and sort of see where the bar is set. Now, with secular young adult fiction books, I mean, as far as the content that's in them, I would imagine that because you give a little background, and I don't know much about your upbringing or anything that I detect that you are more religious in nature, lean more towards the Judeo-Christian values. Um, do you find that hard to express that in your writing? Especially, I mean, we just saw a article in Olathe, Kansas, which is just down the road. Full paragraph and class credit for how to transition. So, I mean, you've got this pressure on one side of the secular book world, really wanting to push a certain ideology, and you're on this side. How do you compete with that?
Well, I think there's two things. First thing is that if you look at the Christian film industry and the Christian writing industry, they are both taking off. As a matter of fact, I was just reading an article a couple days ago where a well-known Hollywood studio has gone bankrupt and has had to shut its doors because people are looking for more family-friendly content, and people are also wanting to read more family-friendly books. And I'm I'm not nervous about the competition. What I'm nervous about is the reader's going to accept what I'm saying. Are the readers going to feel like I'm trying to push my beliefs on them, or are the readers going to actually sit there and think of maybe what I'm saying has a grain of truth in it? And that's what I wanted my first book to be about was okay, here's my religious point of view incorporated into this, and maybe take a look at it, see what you think of it. And I'm not I'm not like I can't force people to read the book. So all I can do is market it, post about it, talk about it, and then people have to go and read it for themselves. So but I will say that the Christian industries for film and books are taking off. So I'm not expecting there to be any problem with competition, but we'll see.
Well, and it's nice to see that the other side gets to come up and create something. And I think, for all the problems that are going to be created by AI, the ability to make movies with AI now opens it up. It there's no longer a gatekeeper in California deciding what type of movies get pushed out. Just because they have all the tools to make the movie. Now, Georgia, Tennessee, all these other places have the ability and the funds to actually put out competitive content and have it be from a Christian side of view, which I haven't seen something like that since, like the late 80s, early 90s. I feel like it'd been really tampered down.
Yeah, what I will say is when you spoke of AI, I don't know if your viewers know this, but right now there's a struggle going on with the entertainment industry, from musicians to actors to writers. What's happening, especially in the music and writing field, is that AI it goes in and it searches the web for songs and books, and then it rewrites those, and then it gets the copyrights to those songs and books. So now authors and singers can no longer use their own work anymore. And so there have been multiple lawsuits against companies such as Google and some other companies. And there's also been regulations that are trying to be put in place. I don't want to get too political, but I'll just say that um, there's not a lot of support from the certain parts of the government for restrictions on AI, and then you get into the aspect of it's not just the writing industry, it's not just the entertainment industry. The other thing I was reading the other day, not to get really dark, but I was AI is causing children and teenagers to commit suicide. It is training them, it is teaching them, it is telling them how to do it, and it is encouraging them to do it. So I would say to everybody that you should call your congressman, your senator. Right now, there's a bill that Josh Hawley is putting forth to put in those regulations to protect children and entertainers. Um, so I would tell you guys to call your reps, call your senators, and make sure that bill gets passed to protect your kids and also us in this industry.
I can see and that is horrible too. We've talked about it on the show. It's called the Eliza effect. It actually happened in the 60s, the first AI created. Um, and the response to it was so concerning that it was described as the Eliza effect, which was, even though the person knows it's not an actual being, they put that belief into them. And then the system itself, like you said, all AI is just a new updated search engine. In my opinion. I know people, I know people have a lot of, it's from antichrist to nothing when it comes to AI, but it's being used mostly as a search engine and as when you say this about banning AI, I feel like this is sort of the same argument for gun ownership, where is it the tool or is it the supervision of the adult that's who's at fault here really? Is it the parents that allow their kids to have a cell phone and access chat gbt, or is it chat gbt itself? It's
Well,
just
I'm
a
not talking
food for
about
thought.
banning AI. I'm talking about putting in regulations. Every other thing in the entire United States, including the internet, is regulated, heavily regulated. I understand the whole, yes, the freedom, yes, the rights. But at a certain point, parents have to draw that line in the sand and say, enough is enough. I'm not going to
Yes.
let my
Yes.
child be told that to commit suicide. I'm not going to do this. And you can have AI, but those restrictions need to be in place, and those restrictions need to be there. I mean, I just was listening to a video the other day of a mother who, now the whole thing is Roblox. She said that the AI in her phone went and turned her son's age to 13, and now he's watching all of this horrible stuff. And so it's I think parents need to be aware that this is what's happening to their children. You don't know, like, if you give your child a device, even if you're supervising them, if you walk away for just 5 minutes, you have no idea what they're doing. They could
Yes.
be doing something else. And so I think that that's really important. And then you have the other turnaround where, on the other side of that, people are losing their jobs and their livelihoods and everything. And so I don't think it needs to be banned, but I think it needs to be regulated in a way that while we still have it, while it's still coming out, we can still protect the American citizens and the children.
Well, and with your profession as an author, I think it came out that Sports Illustrated magazine had, I can't remember how many, but several articles that were written by fake authors and generated by AI and played off as being written by, an actual sports beat writer. And there's that it's not just Sports Illustrated doing that. It's everywhere. And you can clearly tell the difference between even when you're scrolling through Facebook. I don't know if you've noticed. I've noticed as of late there's a lot of like rage bait pages, it seems like, in the political hemisphere. And I'm almost convinced they're all AI ran. All the it's just stuff to get people triggered or rage bait them into a response to build up views. But there's nothing genuine, and there's no real intent other than that on these posts. And that's all AI based too. So like for you as an author, now you're not just fighting other authors, you're also fighting losers who type in 3 prompts and can get a whole book written. Hey,
Right.
do you
Yeah.
oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. It's okay.
What do you foresee? I mean, like, just as you sort of look into the future, how do you see human? Because I believe human nature wins. It always does. It's just how we're created. But how do you overcome a problem like this? What do you think the key is?
Well, there's multiple authors who have, I think there's like 53 and counting, more signing on, but that have sued Google and all the other platforms that have AI to try to get the regulations in place. What I see is if we don't regulate something and we don't actually, if we don't get AI regulated, it could, I don't want to say the end of the world, but it could be very detrimental for not just authors but also society, because it's starting with the entertainment industry, it's starting with acting, it's starting with musicians, it's starting with authors. But what's next? I was listening to somebody one time and they said that a lot of times people think that something is good, but they don't think about the and then what. So we have this fully unregulated, fully unleashed. Okay, that's great for search engines. Maybe that's great for if you need, whatever. And then what happens? What comes next after that step? So fighting the AI, I haven't had a problem with it. Personally, in my books, I am keeping a close eye on it, and I have some other people, some of my friends, keeping a close eye, making sure there's nothing in the market to copy it.
Well, to me,
But
and
yeah,
it's
I would.
fascinating. Oh, I was just saying it's fascinating that these companies like Google, Meta, they're the ones building all these data centers for AI, despite the lawsuits. It almost feels like, like when you're the military and you're testing out a new bomb, and you're not quite sure the circumference it's gonna take up in a town, but you drop it anyway and you just sort of see what happens. It feels like Google and Meta have been given this permission. Like, listen, guys, we got your back. There's going to be a lot of angry people because of, Elon Musk has come out and said all the jobs that are going to be lost. Not just Elon, all these people, all these Silicon Valley people have come out and said once AI is up and running to their standards, oh, there's going to be a lot of people without work, a lot of administrative jobs, and so on and so forth. But is that, like you said, what are the outside casualties of a expedited society, right? Because that's what they all want. They just want everything to run smoothly, like the German camps.
I think kind of switching from AI for a minute, I think um one of the biggest things that I've noticed in being an author with the whole um do this now and then what is that people are very impulsive, and there's nothing. For example, when you're writing a book, right? You don't just say, "Oh, I want to write a book," and then go and write it. There's months of planning, unless you're me and I just typed in the children's book. But there's months of planning, and there's months of figuring out what you want to do, and then saying, "Okay, here's my plan, and now what's going to happen." Like for example, when I wrote my first book, right? I didn't think it was going to be published. I wrote it. I was in high school. I was doing a class that was called One Year Adventure Novel, and afterwards you put it into a contest, and I made the semifinals. I didn't make the finals, and but it was that okay, if I do this and I make the finals, then what? Am I going to then publish, or am I going to just sit on it? So, and it's like that in all of life, and I think that that is also something that I try to relay in my work. It's like, okay, when have a decision, a serious decision you need to make, you can't just say, "Oh, let's do this now." You've got to think of all the outcomes and then even pass those outcomes into, okay, if this happens now, what about this?
Nothing happens accidentally. You have to. I'm a firm believer in manifestation. 100%. If you speak aloud what your goal is, and you are constantly saying that goal out loud, you will reach that goal. It's not magic. It's the fact that you're rewiring your body to focus on whatever the task or whatever outcome you're hoping to attain. Um, and like
There's
you said.
there's
Oh,
a
go ahead.
point that I do want to say. I'm sorry, Corey. There's a
Oh,
point
go
that I
ahead.
do want to say to this is um the good majority of why I write not necessarily children's books, but young books is for the truth. Because in society, at least growing up, what was once said was wrong is now being said is right. And at some point, you have to have somebody to say, no, here's the moral. Here is what this country always was. Here is what we need to get back to. And it reminds me of the phrase, if you say a lie enough, if you say a lie long enough, often enough, and loud enough, pretty soon people are going to start to believe it. But the other aspect of that is if you don't have people standing up, and usually it's writers, it's the church, it's other people that are standing up saying this is what the truth is. And so I think a lot of the reason I write young adult fiction is to remind people, to remind the younger generation to go back, do your research. And I don't just mean in the textbooks you get in school. I mean go to a library, get a textbook, or even get like a book from show, and read the accounts of what happened at that time. Read the accounts of what happened in history. Do as much research as you can, because at some point you're going to find somewhere close to the truth, but you can't just take somebody's word for it. You can't just say, well, a teacher told me so, or a professor told me so, I'm going to believe that. Colleges used to be a place where you debated ideas. You went back and forth with ideas, and at some point you realize what the truth was. And having gone through college, not for writing, but having gone through college, that's not the case anymore. And that is concerning because our young adults are not being taught how to not only openly debate, but they're being taught that one way is correct. And if you believe a completely different way, then you're an evil, you're a racist, you're a Nazi, you're homophobic, blah, blah, blah. They're not being taught that there's absolute truth, and then there's and reality, and then there's a completely different side that is not based in truth and reality. And so when I write the young adult fiction, it is to remind them, it is to teach them, it is to tell them there is absolute truth, there is absolute reality, and here it is in your face, you're reading it in front of you.
I appreciate you sharing your perspective going through the school system, because I was raised in a cult, and I was homeschooled. And so after second grade, I didn't experience the school system. I was around it, but I was never went through the 8 hours of schooling through a the fact that Ghislaine Maxwell's dad published all the school book material, I think maybe spared me by not going to public school during that time. Um, but what I did find was interesting was based off of what region I was living in. Kids my age had certain political beliefs, and it was, in this area they believe this way, and in this area they believe this way. And then as soon as they all got out of college, I mean, I would say like 98% of them were all thinking the exact same way. And to me, it seemed like it was more of a programming step than it was. Because in my mind, when I was growing up, I always thought college was this, thirst for knowledge, and the best people that were possible as professors were going to teach you to the best of their abilities what they knew so that you could build on 80, 90 years of information. And then I remember in 2015 the cringe videos started coming out on YouTube, and it was only college campuses where you would see these cringe videos. And um and now, I mean, it seems like it's almost transcended down into the high school level. Like, it started in college, and now you see even in high school, like we mentioned with Olathe there in Kansas. Like, first of all, the whole gender thing, religion aside, all that aside, um, why is it of a concern to a middle school, a high school? Like, at what point did these public schools decide to become the parent and teach the morals? And I think that sort of ties into your need to write books for young adults, um, to show them that there are two sides to this moral equation they're being taught.
Well, first of all, in answer to your question about rules get so powerful, um, parents handed it to them. In the past, if you look from the time this country was founded, when we had one-room schoolhouses, everything about religion, marriage, intimacy, all of that stuff was taught by the parents. And then the schools started dictating what the parents could say, what the parents couldn't say, what they could get involved in, what they couldn't get involved in. I know my parents, when I was in school, were basically told to sit down and shut up. And so then, once you have the parents silent, and once you have the parents not knowing what the child is being taught, now you can teach them whatever you want to teach them. You can teach them a lie, you can teach them fact, and then you're gonna tell the children, "Well, don't tell your parents." Why do you think so many kids come home from school, you say, "How was your day? What'd you learn?" "I don't know, I was good." Right? Because they're being told, "Your parents don't know anything, don't listen to your parents, don't tell your parents what you're learning." Um, and so my goal is to say, okay, like for the first book, right? My goal in that is to tell young adults, okay, you're being taught maybe a little piece of history that, okay, yes, the Holocaust happened. Yes, World War II happened. And that's all you're being taught. And then you're being taught things like when I was in middle school, my teacher said to me, well, Hitler was correct because it was just his side. He just felt that way. And so the kids are learning that, okay, it's correct, but the other thing that I want people to understand is when you label somebody a Nazi, you're comparing them to the Holocaust. You're saying that who they are as a person is exactly what those people that hurt the Jews, that killed the Jews, that raped them, that pillaged them. You're saying that that's what people are just because you don't agree with them. That's what you're labeling them as. And when you start labeling that, that is when society starts breaking down because people think, okay, they're Nazis. Okay, well, we need to get rid of them. And so there needs to be this, not this healthy debate. Yes, healthy debate. What I'm saying is there needs to be this discourse of this is the truth and this is not the truth. And once the two sides sit down and they start talking, that is when you will start to see some healing. I was listening to a video actually of Charlie Kirk, and he said something that really has struck me. And he said, when society stops talking, or he said, when people stop talking, society breaks down. When people stop talking, a civil war happens. And that is what we're seeing start happening is people are starting to stop talking. And people need to continue to talk. You can disagree all you want. You can, say, well, I think justified. You can do that. But as soon as people stop talking, that is when the breakdown of a nation starts. And I think that that is what people need to be aware of. That is what people need to be very cautious of. That you, in this country, you cannot and should not and hopefully will not silence somebody else, even if you disagree with them. Not, yeah, it has to do with the First Amendment, but more about that. Like I said, the breakdown of society. Every country you start to see the less they start talking, the more the society is breaking down. So I think writing is a way of doing that talking, is a way of saying, okay, I may not want to speak politically publicly, or I may not want to tell you publicly, but this is a type of talking. Let's start the dialogue, let's start the discourse.
I think those are I grew up a Jehovah's Witness, and Jehovah's Witnesses were also persecuted in Nazi Germany, and I got to meet some of the people that were in the concentration camps. And what made the witness situation unique was that they were given an opportunity once a month to sign a form, and if they signed that form recanting their belief, they could leave the concentration camp, unlike the Jews and the Gypsies. And I think there was only like maybe not even 10 that did that. They were so beholden by their belief system that even the Nazi party couldn't break that. And you see that, and it's not just Jehovah's Witnesses. You see that in a lot of, there was Lutherans, there was Catholics, there was all sorts of religious groups that stood up to Hitler at that time. And excuse me, I gotta blow my nose. Let's take a quick little commercial break. I'll come back. We'll do a little AI.
Well, I had just got out from the county prison doing 90 days for non-support. Tried to find me an executive position, but no matter how smooth I talk, they wouldn't listen to the fact that I was a genius. The man said we got all that we can use. Now I got them steadily depressing, low down mind messing, working at the car wash too.
Well, I shouldn't be sitting in a half-conditioned office in a swivel chair, talking some trash to the secretary, saying, yeah, partner, come on over here. Instead of stuff me up, rubbing these fenders with a rag, and walking home in soggy old shoes. But with them steadily depressing, low down mind messing, working at the car wash blues.
You know, a man of my ability, he should be smoking on a big cigar.
But till I get myself straight, I guess I'll just have to wait in my rubber suit of rubbing these tars.
Well, all I can do is to shake my head. You might not believe that it's true.
Oh, working at the end on Niagara Falls, there's a undiscovered Howard Hughes. So baby,
Don't expect to see me with no double martini and in my highbrow society news. Cause I got them steadily depressing, low down mind messing, working at the car wash blues.
Oh, all right. Sorry about that. I absolutely had to clear the sinuses. It's that eye infection that Macron gave me at the G7 summit. It's just doing wonders, but it's not contagious. So not contagious to you guys. All right. So no, we were talking about making sure people don't forget, and when I was reading your book, Schindler's Goal, because I I talked to one of the first things they did was they closed down the headquarters in Berlin, Germany, and arrested all the 19, 20-year-old guys that were working there at the print factory, making Bibles and religious publications. And one of them was Brother Abrahamson was his name. And German, wore a bow tie when I met him, little old German dude. And then there was Max and Simone Liebster. One was a Jew, one was a witness. They met in a concentration camp and got married. And it's just sort of fascinating because they were all it all happened slow and fast at the same time. Like everyone could sort of see the signs, but at the same time, life was good. Life was distracting. You just, what were you going to do but carry on? And then at first, Germany made a lot of good choices, which benefited. They took over some weak countries. Poland didn't put up a fight. That's a good win. France capitulated. And then it turned around, and then they lost a whole generation of men because of that war again. And
Well, I think if you look at historically what happened is that kind of like we said earlier, if you tell a lie long enough, loud enough, and often enough, pretty soon believe it. And that's what was being told. The at first the rhetoric was, well, the Jews have all the jobs, the Jews have all the money, they have all the influence, they have all the affluence, they have all of that, right? And then you begin to watch, and I think
well, it was. Now I will fight back a little bit on this because with every lie there is truth cemented in it. And the fact that there was children brothels during the Weimar Republic, the fact that transgender studies was started by two Jews in Berlin, the very first transgender tests, and mutilation of human bodies for just fun experimentation was done during the Weimar Republic. That is what Hitler spoke out against, and so I feel like now probably 90% of the German people agreed with him on that. And then on the side, he was just sort of, that's communist, or that's, isms, isms in
yeah.
general is you throw people into groups, right? So you can't just be like, well, it's just Henry and Joseph Schwartzel over here doing this, and then this guy and this guy in the movie industry. You're just going to say, no, it's the whole group's got to go. And
Well,
and that's what they got caught up in.
the problem was there was nobody standing up against it. Martin E. Moeller said, first they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out against that. And then they came for the Christians, and I did not speak out because I was not a Christian. And then they came for me, and there was no one left. And there was nobody, because what was happening was Hitler was going in, signing the peace treaties, and at that point, the peace treaties basically made the military of that whichever country he was signing null and void. They couldn't do anything. So then Hitler could come in, and he could basically take over the country, and there's nothing that they could do. But then at that time, Hitler was also going in. He was taking over the churches. He got rid of the Bible, put Mein Kampf in it. All the churches had to have the Nazi eagle and the swastika. All the churches had to basically essentially worship Hitler. So now he was making himself into a god. And so everything, the entire thing was more centered about his view and his way of doing things. And
And I agree with all that. I think we're both in agreement with it. I think the skill of Hitler though was to hyper focus on things that actually affected lower class and middle class citizens. And once he got the power, then he ran with it and did anything he wanted because he was the dictator. But to get to that point of having the power, and you see, I know everyone talks about our president now. He doesn't have the power. we haven't had a president that's had power for several decades. The power of our government is run by the State Department, and that's a different discussion. But there is always, there's a dictator in every leader, so they're always trying to get that power. And I think, man, you look at conditions now, and we're pretty close. I feel like to I mean, I know ICE isn't Gestapo, and I'm not saying all that, but I do feel like there is definite the things I stood for, which was the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment. A lot of these have been thrown aside for the call for security. And that is what Hitler did. He threw away people's rights because he was going to make them secure. He knew what their issues were, and he was going to make them feel safe. Just let him have the power to do it. There's a speech he
There's a difference. I'm sorry, Court. There's a difference between those. Um, if you look at what is happening, what however ICE is treating the illegals, that's beside the point. During the last 4 years of the last administration, women were raped, women were murdered, women were hurt, especially like Lake and Riley. If
Yes.
those illegals had not come into this country, if we had had a secure border where we had had ICE being able to detain and deport, Lake and Riley would still be alive today. All of those other women who were raped and murdered would still be alive today. And and so the other thing that I often tell people is if you're illegal in this country, you don't get the same privileges as if you're a citizen. Because you and I are born here. If we were to enter another country illegally, we would not have a right to any of any of their legislative processes or anything if we did something.
Yes.
So
Yes, we all agree to that. And I agree with you that and it's more than the past 4 years. It's been there's it's been since 1901, since Teddy Roosevelt. We've been immigrating workers in for cheap labor costs to offset our lifestyle. Uh, That's horrible, but that's what we've been doing for 100 years now. But in the with COVID and everything that happened, all the jobs lost from people that stood up for themselves through whatever reason they had. Um, Now there is a desperate need for these workers, and like you mentioned, the last 4 years, they said probably 10 million came in.
yeah,
I don't
something like that.
disagree with any of what you're saying there. I also think though that the American citizens that are getting their rights trampled on, that's not good either. That's
I
the whole
often wonder
reason
what
you're
happened. I often wonder what happened to hire American, buy American. Hire the citizens, and then buy. Um,
well, and you
of the,
see that growing up in a Republican state in farm country, I could see the hypocrisy from the time I was a kid because I had all these Republicans around me saying, "Oh, illegal immigration." Since the 90s, they've been talking about illegal immigration. And then every summer would come around, and guess who was working the pig farms? Guess who was working their cornfields? Guess who was detasseling their corn crops? All illegal immigration. To this day, I'll tell you example, one very red town, Trump signs everywhere. Uh, First thing they did was check to make sure to see which Mexicans were working and which ones didn't. And then ICE raided the ones that didn't. Don't you think all of them should have been raided? I mean, it's just a crazy sort of double standard where we're led to believe one thing, and the truth is it's just to benefit one side or the other. Go ahead, I can tell you.
there is something I want to bring up, totally off this part of the topic. I think I don't know if people know this, but a lot of our medical advances and all the medical textbooks and all of the stuff that you learn in med school was all found out about during the Holocaust because the Nazis would do the medical experiments on the Jews. Usually, I hate to say this, but usually autistic children and people with disability people. And they would do these experiments. And so a lot of the things that we call technological advances today were actually done by the Nazis that wrote the textbooks. And I think another point that people don't know either is that the Nuremberg trials, not everybody actually was put on trial. If you read historical, I'm talking about actual historical eyewitness accounts. There were multiple people, multiple Nazis that were there that paid off some of the people that were prosecuting them and that were their juries, and they paid them off, and then they came to the United States, and they came under different names, obviously, and then they put all of their medical experiments, technologies, whatever you want to call it, they infiltrated that into the med schools. So
And
um,
rockets.
while
And rockets.
while we are the most technologically advanced, it came at a cost. It came at people's lives.
That is a very interesting point because look at all the lives it saved too. And we're not going to go down that wormhole, but it is, it's very interesting. And especially with, uh, the we're built on the idea that we went over to Europe to liberate Europe, to save Europe. That's what we've been told since we were kids. That's what our parents were told. That's what all the movies tell us. When in actuality, like the United States and Britain, in comparison with Russia, did very little to win the war. But the deals were made. Operation Paperclip, I'm sure you are familiar with, where those people were sent out. Little interesting history fact on the Nuremberg trial. Do you know the argument used to defend their act of euthanizing and sterilizing large masses of populations?
I think I did at one point, but refresh my memory.
They based it off of the American Supreme Court decision of 1912, in which it is legal for the United States to sterilize their public. And that court decision has not been changed from that time. It's an interesting book called I can't remember. It's Moron, or I have to look it up, but it's a case of a poor girl that was raped by her step cousin, and the people that adopted her were so ashamed that they claimed she was mentally um, retarded, not full on, just a little bit. And they convinced these two lawyers to take it all the way up to the Supreme Court, in which the Supreme Court ruled that they could forcibly sterilize any U.S. citizen. And guess the last time that took place? California in 2017 was the last forced sterilization in the United States. And that was
I probably am gonna get demonetized for this on YouTube, but I personally believe wholeheartedly that the HPV vaccine um is a sterilization method. And the reason I say that is because when I was working in retail, I had multiple people who came up to me who allowed their sons and their daughters to have the HPV vaccine. And they came to me afterwards and they said, "Oh yeah, I just got back from bringing my kid to the doctor, and guess what? They say he's sterilized now." And I said, "Okay, well, what was the last thing that you had them take?" I said, "Oh, well, a couple days ago they got the vaccine or they got whatever." And so I think it's being done, but I don't think that it's being made aware of.
First of
I
all,
don't think people.
we don't care about demonetization when it comes to stuff like that. Like that stuff is, who cares if we don't make 20 cents off of this video? Like that stuff's too important to not say. That I really feel that, because and we've talked about this years ago on the show. You can go and find the UN memo sent to the UN from I'm horrible with names, but I think it was like Nigeria, or it was one of those countries where the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation went in there with HP vaccinations and completely Why can't I think of the word now? Can't have babies. They're kids.
Sterilization.
Sterilize their kids. Yes. Sterilized. Or if it didn't sterilize them, they died a few years later from like they were extra immune to measles, mumps, tuberculosis, but they were immune from malaria. I
Well,
mean,
one
just
thing that I want to say about the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is well, there's two things. I'm not going to disclose my medical things, but I had a doctor who was working at that time in that location, and he was a PhD. He had two PhDs. He was an MD, and he ended up becoming a naturopathic doctor. But he said that it was one of the scariest things. He got malaria, and he almost died from it. And he said what really is telling is when a country would want the vaccines, bans they ban the person bringing in the vaccines. So that leads to the question of why? Why would a country just all of a sudden ban a vaccine?
and it's not just one country, it's several countries. India, several African countries. It's not just a one-off oops. This
So then the
almost
question becomes, what do they know that we don't know?
well, you see, that goes back to what the Nazis believed in. This all goes back to Darwinism. And we talked about it in an older show. I don't want to, but I know you like history, so I'll feed you a little bit here. But Darwin's cousin
Mhm.
um takes the belief of survival of the fittest and says, well, why doesn't that apply to just human race as well? And boom, there comes the whole master race theory, which comes from Darwinism. And then from that set of belief, a few years later, building on that, and I forget the names, they're like French and all that stuff, but the IQ test is created. And the IQ test, now they did an IQ test of the World War I United States Army men, half of them failed it. Right. So it was not a good IQ test. But what was the reasoning behind it? Those psychiatry was in its birth form, and they were trying to show their value on a world stage. And so by saying that we can create, they had an IQ test for like 18-month-old, 1-year-olds. And they said that once they did these tests, they knew the IQ of the baby at birth. And that IQ would never go up. It would never go down. There was nothing you could do to grow the IQ. There was nothing you could do to take it away. Kid was set at that IQ, and it was figured out at 1. And then the kids that they deemed, there's 5 medical terms for idiots. It's like moron, retard, imbecile. Imbecile is the name of the book, by the way. Look up this book, Imbecile. It's fascinating. This poor girl, it will just break your heart. And it'll teach you a little something about the whole basis of the Nazi party was based on the eugenics movement in the United States in the 1910s.
And you know what else is really interesting? Schools. When I was in public school before I became public school, I remember opening up a textbook. I was in freshman science class, and all of my life I had been taught that the world was created in 4 literal days, 4,000 years ago, however many years ago, right? And I open up this textbook, and there's evolution in this textbook, and everybody takes evolution as solid fact. And I think the interesting thing about this is Darwin himself, on his deathbed, denounced evolution and said that it was a mistake and that he should never have said it. He should never have even done it. But by that time, society had already become ingrained in society. So when you're
Well,
talking about
and
spreading
for
a
a
lie,
reason, like there's a lot of people having coming up with crazy thoughts in the 1800s, but the powers that be handpicked Darwin's evolutionary theory because it backed up what they had already believed in was there was a master group of humans. They're the master group of humans, and everyone else is sort of pawns to that game. And there's 2 world wars to prove. We're in a 3rd world war right now. No one likes to talk about, but when you lose 5 million people in 2 years, you're in another world war. So, we've now lost, close to 150 million people in not even 110 years because of a lot of it. Not all of it, there's human greed and all that stuff involved, but this belief system that got all the people behind it, that to this day, people like Bill and Melinda Gates believe in eugenicism, go to a church that teaches eugenicism, hangs out with people who preach eugenicism, are still trying to practice eugenicism in different countries. So it's a very...
And
Go ahead.
you know what's telling about the whole eugenics is I'm getting into a topic nobody likes to talk about. The whole thing with abortion, right? If you look back at abortion, and I'm not talking about in the 1800s, I'm talking about during like Martin Luther King's day. Abortion was started in that time period by a wife of one of the KKK members. And so when you read the actual history, you read what she wrote, you read everything she
Are you
said.
talking Margaret Thatcher?
Yeah, I was going between her
Yes,
and Margaret
yes.
Sanger, so I didn't say it.
Well, maybe
But
that.
yeah,
Yeah, yes.
so
To get rid of black babies. That's what they wanted it for.
exactly.
Let's be, they were like, listen, these guys that love to procreate, too many kids. Let's come in. And it teaches you how they did it. And it took them a little while because Margaret Thatcher was, she was stubborn. And have you ever watched any of her interviews on YouTube?
I have not. I've read her works though.
You want to get chills down your bone. Watch the woman talk. It makes me almost want to. Can we pull up one? Are you okay with that?
Sure.
Let me pull up one here. Give me a second here. We'll go to a little music break. Let's go Nickelback and Ray Charles.
What you say?
Never made it as a wise man. I couldn't cut it as a poor man's stealing. Tired of living like a blind man.
What you say?
Shake aside without a sense of feeling. This is how you remind me. This is how you remind me of what I really am. It's not like you to say sorry. I was waiting on a different story. This time I'm mistaken for it, and you are worth breaking. And I've been wrong. I've been down into the bottom of every bottle. These 5 words in my head scream out, we haven't fun yet.
Only here at Fanfic. See, this is why we can't get rid of AI, because they made Nickelback sound amazing. And if you can do that, you deserve to stick around, in my opinion. And you're right. It's Margaret Sanger. Margaret Thatcher was prime minister.
That's right.
Yeah, of the UK.
That's why I didn't say it, because I was going back and forth with the names in my head, and I was like, oh wait, which one is it?
Yeah, well, as soon as you said it, I was like, oh damn it, I think she is right. Okay, so we got let me pull this up. Margaret Sanger on morals. This one.
This is what Margaret Sanger believes in her own words.
In sin? When I say believe, I don't mean to believe in committing sin. Do you believe there is such a thing as sin?
I think the greatest sin in the world is bringing children into the world that have disease from their parents, that have no chance in the world to be a human being, practically. Delinquents, prisoners, all sorts of things just marked when they're born. That, to me, is the greatest sin that people can commit.
But sin in the ordinary sense that we regard it, do you believe or do you not believe?
Well, what would they believe?
Do you believe that infidelity is a sin?
Well, I'm not going to specify what I think is sin. I've stated what I think is the worst sin.
Yes.
It has so many personalities to it, and what a person's own belief is. I couldn't generalize any of those things as being sin.
Murder is a sin.
Well, I naturally think murder is a sin or not. It's a terrible act.
That's Margaret Sanger in her own words. Grace and peace. This is what
Margaret Sanger's saying that murder's a sin, yet she's going and murdering children.
She didn't even say it was a sin. She thought it was unpleasant. So now it's unpleasant. That's the leader that people like Bill Gates, Hillary Clinton, just anyone that tells you Planned Parenthood is one of the most beautiful things ever created for young women, it's killed more than the world wars at home.
I I had a therapist one time tell me, she said, you know, you're first of all, to any of your viewers, if you are seeing a counselor, they should not be telling you what to believe, what to think, and what to say. If they are coming against your beliefs, your morals, and your religion, stop seeing them. Um, but anyways, my therapist at the time, I'm no longer seeing this therapist, but he said to me, you know, Planned Parenthood, abortion isn't what they do. They provide all different kinds of services. 70% of what they do is other kinds of services. And she's like, it's women's health. And I said, okay, well, have you actually taken a look at what the women's health is? And he was like, "Well, no." And I was like, "Well, you should go take a look at that and then come talk to me." But I think the other thing when we're talking about a societal breakdown where two sides stop talking, um, a I just lost my train of thought. An example of that is where you have hospitals and adoption facilities that are being mandated. It is a law; it has not been repealed. It's was not an executive order; it's law that they have to put where the nearest Planned Parenthood is. They have to put up posters every wall in their adoption facility, in their hospital, any maternity wards, any of that. They have to put up the nearest abortion clinic. And but yet Planned Parenthood doesn't have to put up the nearest adoption clinic or the nearest maternity ward or and then you have the other law of you can't, you know, if you're a Christian and you're protesting, you can't come within 50 feet of an abortion clinic. And so that's kind of what I was talking with societal breakdown where two sides have stopped talking. Now it's just, okay, this is what you have to do. And just because, you know, I have the right to say something, but we don't like what you have to say, so you go over here and you stand over here, or you do what we tell you to do, and you can't really give your side.
Well, and it's scary because these were positions we were taught as kids warranted our respect. Your teacher warranted your respect. Your principal warranted your respect. Your preacher, your doctor. When you went to your doctor and he told you to quit doing something, you know, or to do something, or to take these pills, you took them because this guy, man, he spent time at university and college and 20 years, you know, seeing people and then I would say probably around 2015 you see a breakdown, you know, the institutions which we thought garnered respect. uh, I mean, internet comes out and now we're seeing, oh, these guys are lying to us all the time. They lie to us all the time. And then COVID happens. Now our doctors are lying to us, or you know, it's lying to you. They're lying to you because they could do the research too. And they chose to rather read a journal that told them what to think. And
I'm gonna come against that for a minute. They're not lying to you because they can do the research. They're lying to you because they think you're stupid. Because they think that you're not going to dig in and dig deep. And I mean, you see it. Like, how many times have you gone to the doctor and they've said, take this medication? You take it blindly, and then you go back and you read the side effects, and you're like, oh no, this could be. I have a really bad problem to this ingredient in it, and I could have a serious side effect to it. But they don't tell you that. They say, oh, it's safe and effective. It's been around 160 years. Take this medication. It, antidepressants, right? Everybody is trying to get people who are depressed, who are anxiety ridden on antidepressants. But what nobody talks about, and this is why I will not take antidepressants, is because antidepressants bring up the suicide rate by 70%. That means
I
you're
laugh
losing.
because it's the opposite of what it's supposed to do.
Exactly, exactly, and so, but yet they're prescribing it to young adults and children and teens under the guise of, oh, it's safe and effective. don't worry about it, it'll help you. And then nobody is going back. None of the parents are going back and researching and saying, wait a second, what is happening here? Why is my kid suddenly have suicidal ideation? And then it comes as a surprise because like, oh well, they were on antidepressants, it should help. That's what I'm saying. Like the medical community thinks the American people is stupid, and you can see it by the results that are happening.
That's 100% nail on the head, because I remember a commercial this about 6 years ago, and it was super sad. All these sad kids, dark setting, and they go, 1 in 5 kids have a mental illness. And then it was like, take care of your kids, take them to a doctor. And it was so infuriating to me because I was, I went through a depression several times. I've gone through depression several times. I got lucky because my very first person, he wasn't like a full-time therapist that you have nowadays. He saw me 2 times. And he was an old World War II Navy therapist. Right. So this guy had been around the block, and he asked me, he's like, well, Corey, who are you? And I'm like, well, I'm an electrician. I have this mental illness. And he goes, no. First of all, you are not an electrician, and you are not your illness. You are neither of those things.
Sure.
And it changed my life because it removed victim mentality from me and dependency. Now, these kids, the 1 in 5 that are being told they have a mental deficiency that they will never recover from unless they take this pill. What does that do to the psyche of a 10-year-old, of an 11-year-old, of a 12-year-old? You're creating a whole generation that believes 100% believes the thing that is wrong is them. Inherently, they are the disease. They are uncurable. And without pharmaceuticals, they could never dream of a happy American dream. And that's what's evil. And there was a doctor, and he talked about how medical companies changed when the pill, I don't know what the actual name of it is called, birth control pill, the pill, came out in the 60s, because it was the first time you could give someone a medication that they had to take for life. Up until that point, medicine was you gave someone a medication so that they wouldn't have to come back and take more. You were
Right. It's become patience for life. And I think
patients
to
for
your
life.
point, it is a societal stigmatism is what the medical terminology, having gone to medical school, societal stigmatism of things like depression or ADHD or something like that. Like, people have ADHD. I am medicated. I have to be medicated. It is very helpful to be medicated. Oh. And so I can function. I'm medicated, but there are other people who don't.
Well, and I want
And
to pause
so
that. I want to pause that because you can function in this society because of the medication. You're not unable to function as a base human being. You just had, in order to live by the conscripts of this society in America, those pills help you function in that sense. But
right, but my point is that society stigmatizes people who have that. That is if you have something like ADHD, you have depression, you are considered mentally ill, and therefore you have to be, treated as you're mentally ill. When in fact, science has proven a chemical imbalance in your brain that you are depressed, or abuse that you have suffered, or trauma, or whatever. Right? It's not just because you're going through something like that does not mean you're mentally ill. And I think that is something society needs to stop saying. Things like mass genocidists or homicide, people who are homicidal, right? Those are mental illnesses that cause that. things, other things like depression and stuff, that is where we need to make that distinction, that society needs to say, okay, this is not and this is, and we're going to treat them as two separate things.
Yeah, and obviously pills don't work to the extent that they want them to. So there's no drive to find homeopathic. I don't want to say cure because I don't think it's a cure type of situation. Like if your body produces a chemical imbalance, you know, people's bodies who have produced a chemical imbalance have produced some of the greatest arts throughout history. Did that make Michelangelo a detriment to society or not valuable to society? Did it make Abraham Lincoln? I mean, you could go through lists of people who suffered from chemical imbalances in their body and not only survived this world, but contributed greatly to its success. And that's sort of the issue I have is we're telling these kids, no, 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 no. No, no, no. Just because your body doesn't produce this or produces more of this, that doesn't work for our 9 to 5 cubicle jobs we have waiting for you or whatever, drone flying missions we got for you to do. Rather, instead, we're going to have you become as docile as possible. Think that there is something wrong with you for your entire life. That way you don't do something too silly. And then that way you'll be the perfect human resource for us. You'll go to your job, you'll do your menial tasks. You won't ask questions about what the government's doing. Those are the annoying people. And then you'll die before you draw Social Security, which is perfect for us. Sorry, I went on a little rant there.
Well, I was going to say, part of the problem is, it used to be before it was like 1914, 1915, somewhere in that area. You had MDs and then you had naturopathic doctors. So if an MD said, you have depression or whatever, they would say, okay, well, go to this naturopathic doctor, take these vitamins, take these whatever. And then J.D. Rockefeller decided that they could make more money prescribing medication and vaccines and all sorts of stuff than they could with supplements and vitamins. And what started happening was he was able to get it through Congress, through state legislatures, through everything that holistic and naturopathic doctors were basically dumb and they didn't know what they were talking about. They got their medical license revoked. They could not go to medical school. They were banned from going to any of the medical meetings or peer-reviewed journals. So now they've become kind of like an outcast. And so, but before Rockefeller, if you had a problem like, you know, like I said, like depression or whatever, you would go to a naturopath and they would actually refer you to a naturopath. And now if you go to a naturopath, it is considered what's the
Plus,
word I'm looking for?
depression wasn't a thing necessary. I mean, there was severe cases of depression, right? Obviously, where a person was despondent, trauma had taken place and they needed care. But the majority of people, they were depressed. They went home to their families. They went on with their lives and they made it work. It feels like, well, and who created Johns Hopkins University? The tell-all of the medical world. It was Rockefeller. So obviously you created the whole schooling system. I mean, it's the whole gear is set into motion here by, the Rockefeller Rothschilds. You can go on and on about it was anyone
Yeah,
who was
they were good friends.
yeah. Kellogg. Kellogg was a big buddy of theirs too. Kellogg cereal, that guy was
Didn't
absolutely insane.
didn't the Rothschilds didn't they have something to do with the oil industry?
Rothschilds, yes, big oil barons, but they come from France and they have direct ties to the City of London banking system. A lot of people feel that they were the oil industry arm of the City of London. So that's why they were the well-to-do And they still are. That's the crazy thing. They've taken a note from the mob, the mafia, and they've all just sort of taken a side seat and let politicians and activists take their role so that the focus doesn't become on the actual problem. That's
So here's
side.
how I'm going to anger a lot of people. I think a lot of the problems we have in society right now is because of the church is not doing their job. History shows that the church was the stopgap between evil and what was good, and they stood up and they said, "No, this is where the country is going. We are going to stand up and we are going to declare that we are not going to do this." And the church has fallen silent. The church has fallen silent on numerous issues. I remember I spoke with a former pastor of mine, and I said to him, "Why is it that you're waiting for the world to come into the church instead of the church going out to the world like they usually did?" And so that's something that's concerning, is that there's no longer that stopgap to say, "We're not doing this, not today." And instead, it's they all wanna keep their tax exempt status, so we'll just be quiet, we just won't say anything. And then you see the nation pretty much falling apart because there's nobody to stop it.
I watched a fascinating documentary on where do 90s and 2000 kids that were born in the 90s and early 2000s, where do they get their morals from since the church fell away? Where did they what how did they replace the morals? Because you got to get it from somewhere. And it was a fascinating dive on Disney and how Disney and the Disney Channel that raised these kids while their parents were forced to work taught them a Disney set of morals, and which is inherently selfish. The moral guideline taught, every Disney movie involves one main protagonist, and everything revolves around that protagonist. And then they mentioned, especially the Disney Channel, and how it hyper focused on teenage girls, young teenage girls, and now where you've got what happened in Minneapolis, you've got several cases of activists all around, and it sort of starts to make sense how they've convinced themselves they're on the moral high ground in these arguments, and why they act crazy, because they are the main character. They don't recognize anything. It was very interesting. I tend to believe, I think Disney is an evil corporation, but we've already done shows
But
on.
I mean, you look at what it taught them. It taught them that their parents know nothing, that they can disrespect their parents with no consequences, that their dads are just stupid and have no idea what they're talking about, that they won't get the consequences from their dad because he doesn't know what he's talking about, that the school and the government and their peers are the only ones they can trust and the only ones that know best for them. So it has taken now the Gen Z and millennials, it has taken them, well, not the older millennials, but most millennials I know, it has taken them from actually believing what their parents say, knowing their parents have the best intentions for them, and then removing their parents from the equation. And I remember I was reading something back in 2016, I was 17, and it was a quote from, I believe it was Hillary Clinton, and she said, "If we can remove the parents, then we can have the minds of the children."
That is Marx, I believe. I
Hmm,
believe that's Marx. I don't think that's Marx either. I think it's Soviet. It's Soviet though. It's Soviet. I remember that.
but
It's
they believe
Marx
it.
or Stalin or something like that. But yes, you're one generation removed. It had something to do. Yes. But yes. Well, now here's the thing. I think they succeeded. And now what I find interesting is this uh push back to religion. And I don't think it's a bad thing, but I also think that it's not by divine design either. I think there's a more I think there's a diabolical push behind it than we know. Because the one thing you need when you go into wars is religion is used heavily to motivate the masses. And if you can't have religion to back you up, you're not going to have a successful war. And that's been proven throughout history on both
Can I
sides.
say something to this effect?
Yes.
I'm going to say this, and you can disagree. It's okay. The Bible has been proven correct multiple times. You look at things like the walls of Jericho. They have found the walls of Jericho. They have said that the walls of Jericho fell outward. Usually, if it is, or was it inward? I think it was inward. Whichever. Usually, if it is an attack on from the walls fall inward, they have found multiple evidences confirming that. I wouldn't say Christianity. I'd say the biblical perspective of Christianity is accurate and correct. So I do think that there is something to, I don't like calling it religion because religion removes the aspect of God, but there is something to it. But like I was
I
talking to a friend the other day, and she was saying that, and I was saying, both of us were saying that a lot of these things are being found. For example, Noah's Ark. They have actually finally found Noah's Ark. It is exactly as the Bible has said. It is the specifications. It is the height. It is everything that is said. And time again, they are constantly finding it. That proves the Bible is correct, but they will not, absolutely will not acknowledge that it's correct. For example, you look at Glen Rose, Texas, the dry riverbeds. They have found, and they have pictures, they have found human footprints on top of dinosaur footprints, proving that dinosaurs and man walked the earth at the exact same time, that it was not millions and millions of years ago. And yet people still refuse to acknowledge it. And they will not, no matter how much you tell them and how much evidence you give them, they will not believe you.
I I mm, I don't disagree with you. Uh I am more orthodox leaning in my Christian belief, and it's taken me a long time to get there because of how I was raised. I was a minister for 15 years and was taught one way to look at the Bible one way. So, and very successfully propagandized as a witness to do so. But the perks of being a witness too was that we were forced to research the origin to everything, origin to holidays, origin to religious, traditions and beliefs and where they stem from, so on and so forth, which is, pretty much the basis for this show, Phantom Facts, is because that's what fascinated me as a young kid was all of, the origin of Easter, the origin of Christmas, the origin of triune gods. But what I do think is interesting when it comes to this push towards Christianity and what we're being told. I don't know if you had ever heard of the short season or the little season. Um, and I don't want to get into theology here because everyone has their belief system, and I'm not, the XJW in me just loves to become dogmatic and argue this till I'm blue in the face. So it's best not to even do it. Oh, I've lost your sound a little bit. I lost your sound. I don't know why. It's all right. We'll give it a sec here. Wait for it. I don't know. It was just I don't know if it switched over or well, we lost C's Lark sound for a second here.
There we go.
There you are. Okay. Go ahead. What were you saying?
I said I should ask you about JWs sometime. Because I did a study on them. I don't remember everything, but I did a study on them when I was in high school.
Ask away. I love talking about it. Yeah, no, yeah. Ask me any question. We'll do it on the show too. That's even better. But because what people don't understand is I was not like, I was a all-in believer, and I had spent since the time I was 6 knocking on doors, and we were taught to research, and I took it very seriously. So, and it wasn't until my early 20s I started to see irregularities and what the actual mission of the church was. In my mind, like, I look at Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, Catholics. Listen, if it puts you with a good group of people and it improves your community and your community thrives and takes care of the needy and takes care of the widows, and you know more power to you. Like, the Mormons, to me, like, hey, these guys, I don't believe in what they say, they but they don't go around hurting other people, and I think that there's something to be said for that. You could be of a different religious belief where you want to go around and bomb countries that don't believe you. And there are Christians that would do that back in the day too.
Mhm.
So let's not, that's not just a shot across the bow to Muslims, although it was sort of. But nonetheless, like, that's the thing. Like, if it's a tool on your path with God, then that's exactly what religion is for. It's a walking stick. It's not the path. Religion is not the path with your relationship with God. It's merely to help you along the journey. That's my conclusion on the matter. And a lot of these religions require blind faith and leadership, and become very sort of worldly in how they want to control the thought process. And you can see that as this Marxist ideology crept in 2013, 2014. You saw a lot of pastors give into what
Mhm.
the tickling of ears, I think, is how it's described.
Yes. Yeah.
Making people feel good about themselves instead of
Yeah.
sticking to what ended up being the best advice to get you through it. I think of all these people that mutilated their bodies because they were told to, because they were told it would bring them happiness and completeness. And now, there's a vast percentage of them that realize that they've made a decision that they can never go back to. I knew one lady, she lost her husband, committed suicide after his sex change. Horrible, horrible ending. And if you're a pastor and that was the counsel you gave because it tickled their ears at the time, I mean, you're just a big piece of shit. That, in my opinion, because you had an opportunity to stick to what you knew and you chose not to. Same thing with these religions that bowed to the COVID regulations. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have masked up or you shouldn't have done a Zoom church meeting, but to just, without any complaint, let the government shut your churches down. I think it showed who your daddy was. You chose the United States government as your ruling force over, what you've been preaching about the last 60 years. So, it's rant over. Maybe CS Lark ran away. I don't.
Well, no, I just wanted to say that when you're talking about pastors, pastors went from you're a sinner in need of a savior to, oh, give money and you'll be blessed. And it was one of the worst things that they could have done to people. You look at pastors like Joel Osteen, who it's been found out that he pockets all of the money. And yet all of these people, he has said, oh, yeah, give to the church, you'll be blessed. God's going to, bless you richly. You're not going to have any problems in your life. And that's a false representation of what it is to walk with God.
Or even some of these YouTube preachers. Like, I have noticed a diabolical organized attempt by some of these mass preachers to go on YouTube and shift political ideology through sermon. And that blows my mind. Like, there was this one guy, he was the he was the governor of the country Jordan, and became a Christian, then became a pastor, and then went on tour with this famous Texas preacher, and I don't remember the name. And then coincidentally, this all happened exactly a year before the October 7th attacks. And then after that, all he didn't preach after that. All he did was give war updates. And I just thought, man, what an interesting, like, was that sort of the idea the whole time? Was like you would go over and find, and then it seemed very pre-planned. And there was a whole circuit of YouTube preachers he went to during that time. And
Well,
so, I mean, Olstein's old school at this point. I mean, there's hundreds of these fake preachers out there taking advantage of people.
that is true, and but I would also be cautious in labeling all preachers as that. The Bible is very clear that there are what they call wolves in sheep's clothing. That they on the outside they pretend that they are a godly Christian. Or I'm not talking about regular Christians. I'm talking about specifically pastors and preachers. That their job is to help protect and lead the people of Christ, and instead they have decided that they are going to either take advantage of them or play politics or insert their opinions, whether it be conservative or liberal, insert their opinions into their sermons instead of actually preaching on the word of God. And I think pastors need to be careful that you are not, while you can talk about the fact that we should be voting, we should be getting out, we should be, active in the church and in the nation, you need to be careful that you are not trying to sway people's beliefs, because a lot of people's beliefs come from their pastor. They believe what they believe because their pastor said it or because their pastor told them.
And that's on them. Like, honestly, like, that's on you. If your only relationship to the spirit realm is because of what someone told you, and you don't go out and try to experience that greatness on your own, that's on you. You have to be willing to go out and try to get one-on-one. You can't just expect it to be funneled through you. And that's what happens is these people, they get lazy. It's laziness. And it doesn't, it makes you feel good for a couple hours, right? But there's not a lasting benefit to it, because your only source to it is that you're allowing. Now, if it's there to boost what you already have, that's great. But if you don't have it, you need to go out and find it. You need to find it, immediately, that one-on-one relationship, because no pastor in the world's going to be able to channel that to you. The only thing he can do is make you self-reflect and remind you that you're imperfect once a week. Really, that's his job. Is just a gentle reminder that you need more than you, and then go about your way as you go find what that means. And there's too many, and that's what happens is you can convince a whole group of people because they've, hey, my pastor, I can't tell you how many times as a witness I would go to a pastor's door, and I mean, it had, I was like 12, right? And and we get into the subject of Christmas. Now, whatever about Christmas, but as a 12-year-old,
Christmas. I love Christmas.
as a 12-year-old, I don't see, I would go around. I was like, I got in trouble in kindergarten because no, it was first grade. I got in trouble in first grade because I showed up to school with a Bible, and then I went around to all the kids proving to them that Christmas wasn't on December 25th. And I got in so much trouble for that. That whole generation of kids in Vermilion, South Dakota, their Christmases were ruined because I was going around telling them that there was no way it happened on December 25th. And, that's, I get the gist and the spirit of the thing, but and it didn't bother me when I talked to people that weren't, but when you were talking to a pastor, it bugged the crap out of me because they knew Christmas wasn't on that day. And they also knew that it wasn't just Christ wasn't born that day, but it was a pagan holiday that would have been in direct correlation.
I'm
Sorry. I'm sorry. I don't mean that. I'm just saying I never
I
understood.
had a whole bunch of thoughts there. What I was going to say was that there's a reason it was set on December 25th. It has nothing to do with the pagan holiday. Christmas was celebrated thousands of years before. The reason it was set on December 25th was because St. Nicholas, whoever it is, thanks to Santa, St. Nicholas was actually a Protestant Christian who, at the time, there was a heretic in his church, and he stood up against him, got him kicked out of the church and the town. Every year he collected socks and hats and gloves. And every year on the 25th of December, he felt that he would go and he would give the poor and the needy something that they didn't have. And so every year he would go and he'd give them socks and blankets and everything. And so
that is true. That is all true.
true.
I'm not disputing that. I'm not disputing that warm, fuzzy story of St. Nicholas. I'm just saying that hundreds of years before that, the Romans and the Greeks were also celebrating the exact same time. And my belief is that when the Romans corporatized Catholicism as a church state religion, the adoption of December 25th as Christ's birthday was very convenient in getting all of the pagans on board with this new religion.
Did you know that the early church in Peter and Paul's day was celebrating Christmas? They would exchange gifts in remembrance of what Christ did on the cross, and it was all Christ-centered. It was all that stuff. But the early church, there's writings about it that what they would get into groups, and they would.
I will say I have seen those writings, but I doubt their validity. But it doesn't matter to me. Really, it doesn't matter because I'm not here to destroy Christmas again. I don't want to do that. Didn't bring me joy the first time. I just think that, none of that, all of that information sort of comes out in driblets, that, then 20 years from now, it comes out that, oh, this was forged from 490 CE. Anyway, Christmas is to remember someone very special and to celebrate that moment with friends and to have, it's a spiritual moment you also have with yourself. It's yourself and God. So, it's a very, it's a moment taken in time. What thousands of years ago people did on that day doesn't really matter. In my opinion. Now, don't tell Jehovah's Witness that, but that's our bread and butter. I don't know why I said "our." I'm not a witness anymore. Some see I get talking like this, and I lapse back into 20 years of programming. I'll find myself.
That's so funny. It's so funny. I used to work in retail, and I've been out of retail for 5-6 years now. And every time I talk about that specific store, and I'm like I explain, I was in the store with a friend the other day, and then she's like, "Why are they doing X, Y, and Z?" And I'm always referring to it as we because I'm so used to saying, "Yeah, we're doing this." Yeah.
Well,
I'm like, wait a second, I'm not doing here anymore.
Well, Susan, what we have found is the best operation. Yeah, no, yes, I feel that. I feel that pain. I feel that pain. All right, we'll move on from this. I appreciate you diving down these subjects though, because for some people they're uncomfortable talking about it. They don't want to talk about it, but you've been very open with yourself on the show about these subjects, and I think that's how it should be because you are allowed to have your opinions, and that's what makes America great. That's what Charlie Kirk stood for. Is you're allowed to have spent years studying and formulating your thoughts to develop an opinion and then be able to take it out to the world and let it live among the other opinions and sort itself out and come back to you and make you a stronger person than when you first came. And the shutdown in society, the shutdown in communication, that's what, the Charlie Kirk thing, it's more than an assassination. It's more than a conspiracy. The message that was set by killing Charlie Kirk is the saddest thing. It's the same message.
But it all started from a ideology of that one group of people is correct and the other group of people are Nazis and racist and like Charlie said, it happened because society stopped talking. Because one side of society shut down and they said, I'm not going to listen to a single thing you have to say. And when that happens, violence ensues. And not just that, but you have rhetoric of high-ranking people who are condoning violence, who are inciting violence. And so when you have a group of my generation, with the Gen Zers, and all they know are right violent video games, violent rhetoric, and they hear it every day for 6-8 hours a day, and then when they go to college for longer, right, and they hear it, that's what they believe. So then the communication shuts down, and that is exactly what he warned about a year before he died, that this was going to happen if we stopped talking to each other.
Well, in history doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes, I think is the term, the how it's described. But anyway, this has happened before in American history. Martin Luther King, we just celebrated that man's birthday. Martin Luther King Jr. Once again, this is like a flawed man, but delivered a message so powerful. I mean, so powerful that the content of someone's character, there's nothing more Christian than that, and if that's what you're known for, I mean, God bless that speech. And
I want to tell you something interesting. I grew up with that whole foundation that you look at somebody's the content of their character, not the color of their skin, right? And so I worked with people of a different color, and I knew that they were a different color. I didn't care. I cared about could they get the job done and could they do it in a regular, rational, reasonable time. But then I had friends who were of a different color. And it wasn't until I got into college we actually started looking at the skin color. And that sounds really bad because it was really bad. But I remember I went to college from 2018 to 2022. I remember what it was like before 2020 when we were sitting in classes, when we were all of mixed colors, mixed skin, mixed whatever. Nobody cared. And then I remember what it was like 2020 to 2022, how everything was through a race lens, and there was nothing that you could say or view without the race filter. For example, they had this little it wasn't a questionnaire, it was like a little piece of paper. And so it was given to the professors for people who specifically to target conservative Christian people who would say things like, well, I don't look at skin color, I look at the character. And the professors were told to say, well, sometimes you have to see the skin color to understand the racism that you're showing. And that started in 2020, and from that time, that was how everything was viewed. It was a completely different system. I was coming back from a medical leave that I had to for work and then for college, and so coming back, it was completely different. I was an online student. I sat there and I said to my mom, I don't know what college I'm attending, but it's not the college that I signed up for because it was complete. I mean, 2019, 2018. It was a community college, and you were allowed to say your political views. You were allowed to state, how you felt. 2022 came around, or 2020 to 2022. We had this discussion. There was a school shooting. I don't even remember which one it was. There was a school shooting, and this woman posted on this online forum, and she said, "We have to ban guns, just completely ban them." And I said to her, all due respect, the gun is not the issue. You can put a gun on the table and it's not going to shoot itself, right? So it's the person behind the gun. We need to figure out how to get the guns out of the criminals' hands and how to stop the black market for the guns getting into criminals' hands. And that comment was removed. And I was marked down from 100 to an 80 in that assignment. And so that was from
Wow.
2021 to 2022. Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
So you want to talk about only one viewpoint in college? It is true. It's happening.
Well, and it wasn't my parents' intention, but I missed out on all the propaganda from second grade to high school. Like I was oblivious to it. So I just got to view the world as I saw it, which, it was a lot stranger than, when I talked to other kids my age that just, they knew what was already going on and were convinced. Meanwhile, I'm sitting over here like, uh, you know, very different opinion on the matter. And thankfully so, because, those people have been through heartbreak. They were my generation, the millennial. First of all, we were told that all of, take as many pain pills as you want. First of all, that's how it started off, Ritalin and pain pills. And then we had 9/11 happen and we had to go to war. And that's a whole generation of men that came back and saw things over there that translated to them being bad fathers here, translated them to being bad husbands, family men, workmates, so on and so forth. It destroyed a whole culture essentially. And I feel like Gen Z, your guys' generation, it's nice to see because like there's an attempt to push back on the propaganda that had been pushed on us. We were sort of the first gen propagandized kids of our generation. We had 24/7 Cartoon Network, Disney Channel. Our both parents worked. I mean, not me, but all of my friends. This, Pokemon, all this stuff. They were trained by a television, and then internet came along and cell phones and so on and so forth. Anyway, what I find fascinating is that when we talk about people like Charlie Kirk, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X is another great example. I don't know how much research you did into the later years of Malcolm X's life when he calms down. We're always taught, I was taught Malcolm X, horribly violent person. Don't ever be like Malcolm X. And then we moved on to a different subject in history. Go into what Malcolm X was like an elder Charlie Kirk.
Well, yeah, and I wanted to say something about this school system since we're talking about it. My mom was talking to me the other day, and she had pulled out her aunt's like high school diploma and stuff, and she was telling me that her aunt, or I think it was her aunt, either her aunt or her grandmother, in third grade they were learning calculus, algebra. They were learning that. By the time they got to um, as a junior in high school, they were already learning college classes. So when they graduated high school, they only had to take like 1 or 2 classes and they would have their degree. You look at that, well, that was like 150 years, 100 years ago. You look at that now, it's a completely dumbed down version of what they were learning at that time.
And why? Why did they dumb it down? Why did they? Because it's true. They dumbed it down for. I'm pressing wild buttons here. Sorry, my bad here. Why did they dumb it down though? What was the reasoning? Why did they have to make it so that you guys were dependent on devices, dependent on interaction that was superficial?
Because that's how they can control the minds of children.
It's evil. It's evil. And it's planned. It's not accidental. This wasn't just like, oh, we didn't foresee this. No, they foresaw this. And
I
that's what.
encourage,
Oh, go ahead.
yeah, I encourage everybody when you're saying it's evil and that they planned it. I encourage everybody to go and read the now Department War Secretary, his book, The Miseducation of America, and he lays it out from the beginning to now. He talks about exactly this point of how we got here, why we got here, and what the problems are, and then how we can turn it around. And
Or
so, yeah.
or listen to Phantom Facts. That's a great option too.
Or both.
Yep. Or listen to Phantom Facts. And have you ever Edward Bernays propaganda? The guy that created the whole propaganda wing for the American government. They came to him and said, "Hey, can you create a propaganda wing for us?" And this guy created the most successful propaganda wing and then bragged about it in a book called Propaganda. So, I mean, that's an interesting book to read just from that take of someone who's proud of what they did. And
well, what's interesting, speaking of history, do you know that the New York Times was run by a Nazi? If you go back, I didn't believe this until I actually started doing some research. And then I listened to Glenn Beck, and he showed the New York Times, their editorials, their newspapers from that point in time. It was all demonizing the Jews. It was all supporting Hitler. It was all saying that he was great, that he was good, that he was the savior of the world. Right? So, people say, "Oh, well, propaganda is new in the United States." No, it was around over 100 years ago, and they used it.
Do you know who the bank that financed that magazine and the Third Reich from America?
I did know, but I forgot.
Prescott Bush, father of George H.W. Bush and grandpappy to George W. Bush. He only stopped financing the Nazis when Truman said, "Listen, man, I'm going to call you a traitor and put you on trial if you don't stop giving them money."
Well, I mean, considering the past administration, I mean, you look at things like I think it was Woodrow Wilson. I could be wrong. Might have been FDR. One of them was awarded medals from the Nazis. They even said that they wrote that they agreed with the Nazis. They agreed with Hitler. They met Hitler. There's pictures of them standing next to Hitler, getting medals from him. There's pictures of them in meetings with him, talking about his plans with the Jews. And yet, they didn't even stand up and stop it because they agreed with it. And that just shows how corrupt our government is, that it was corrupt even at that point in time.
I will say this, it's not all about the Jews. The Jews were the cause of what the problem was. And the problem was the banking system is controlled by the City of London, and Germany didn't want to be a part of it. And the banking arm of the City of London was run by Jewish bankers. And therefore, he looped all Jews into this system. But the independence from the City of London was the main goal of Germany. And in that regard, at the beginning, he got vast support for it. We had a guy did a service call. He had a wooden cane with silver tip on it, all engraved. And I asked him about it. And when he was 12, he visited his family in Nazi Germany in 1933. He goes, back when everyone liked him. And then he went back. But that, it means something because when we're young, you're young, I'm young, I still, there 20 years from now, I'm going to look back now and think, "Oh, I didn't know shit." And that's a good thing though. That's a good thing. But, to have someone in their 80s, 90s remember being 12 years old and sort of the contradictory nature of it all, because one year Hitler's on Time magazine, the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal's all up as praising Hitler and everything, and then 3 years later he is the most evil human being who has ever lived. Hitler, out of all three tyrants that lived in the 20th century, killed the least. I mean, Mao killed 50 million people. Stalin killed 15, 20 million people. Hitler got away with 6. And that's not, it's 6 million is still 6 million. It's a horrible number. But it also seems to me like it's always made as an example because they were the ones that went against the banking system in London. And so, I don't know. It gets sort of muddy there. But to talked to someone who was 12 and saw that transition. You know, we've never seen a transition like that. You know, when's the last time we thought of someone and he was a super cool dude, and then 2 weeks later we thought he was the devil incarnate?
Oh, yep. That happens all the time. Yep.
You know, so it's like it's just sort of the same playbook, it seems like. Thank you.
The other thing, I forgot what I was going to say, but yeah, I forgot what I was.
We covered way more than we're supposed to talk about your book and your awards, and we didn't do any of that. So, and that's on me. But this is a very
Well, I was nominated for the Poet of the Year award. So,
yes, that is congratulations.
thank you.
And everyone, people can vote on this too, correct?
Yeah, I believe the voting starts. I think February 1st. I have to check. It'll be on my Facebook and my social medias.
Okay. Well, follow CS Lark on Facebook and her social medias. And I hope you get an extra tens of votes from our listeners, because it's been a great discussion. So I appreciate you coming on the show. I said 1 hour. We hit 2 hours. And we have literally talked World War II, Orthodox Christianity, the flood, abortion, COVID, pretty much anything that could get us banned on a corporate network. So
probably will. And
I guess that makes sense why Lily didn't want to come on the show now. I get it, but at the same time, I'd much rather have this conversation than a fluff piece. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem.
All right, everyone. That's CS Lark joining the show. Go and give her a follow on her socials. We'll post that in the show notes too. Aspiring author, and I mean, I'm excited to see what types of once she starts humming, what types of books she could pump out. I think they'll be very interesting. Anyway, thank you everyone for coming in. We'll be back next Wednesday at 7:00 we'll do a stream of consciousness then, because we have a lot to talk about. We're supposed to now listen. I promised an interview with a Venezuelan escapee that escaped the Maduro regime because he was a professor. Went on their version of CNN, said something bad about the president, was thrown in jail for 3 years, and escaped from prison and got to America, where he became a U.S. citizen. And he is shy. I told him I'd mask him, we'd change his voice. But, I make light of it, but he went through a lot. So we're going to try to get him on this show to talk about what it was like being in a Venezuelan prison. Horrible. And this is what also, just like C.S. Lark, an example of sometimes it sucks standing up for what you believe in. But wouldn't you rather, it's better to do it, man. It's better to do it than be a piece of crap that just jumps around and takes advantage of people. All right. What a wonderful way to end this show. Have a good night, everybody.
This is the emergency broadcast system. This is not a test. Repeat, this is not a test. This is our advice to take the following steps. If exposed, remove the
Podcast for the curious mind. I don't know what that means.